Hi everybody, welcome back to Point of View. Thanks so much for tuning in today. Our guest is going by an anonymous name, Mochi Mango. We talked all about her thoughts on being deaf, mental health, and student life. Mochi Mango has been through a lot, but she has an inspiring story with a motivational twist. So sit back and relax. Enjoy the unpacking of life's deepest thoughts on Point of View. Hello and welcome to the show, everybody. I'm here today with anonymous user Mochi Mango. How are you doing today, Mochi Mango?
I'm doing pretty good.
How are you really doing?
How am I really doing? I think, honest truth, pretty burnt out, pretty exhausted, but I'm holding on.
Is it school catching up to you, life, combination of it all? Tell us more.
It's school, but it's also just, I think, overcommitting to a lot of things because I decided to take on everything that I thought was interesting or that I wanted to do, which ended up probably being a little too much for me.
Are you able to drop any of those things at all or lower your commitments to take some more time for yourself, or that's not really doable?
I would be able to, but I just don't want to because I want to stay involved in all of the things that I'm in right now, and there's still more things that I want to be involved in, which is not a good idea.
What are your top priorities or top commitments?
I would say one of them would be my academics for sure, just because I'm paying to go to college, I might as well make the most of it. And then I think being part of the community, meeting new people and making those new relationships and just, living life.
Would you say that coming to college, have you made a lot of meaningful relationships or kind of taking your time, just letting things happen?
Yeah, I would say so. I would say so far I'm happy with where I'm at. I've met a lot of really cool and amazing new people that I'm really glad that they are a part of my life right now. I would say that I still want to continue making new relationships and just being more involved in the community, but so far I think that I've done a lot better at actually making and forming new bonds with other people than I had expected at the beginning of the school year.
What would you say is your biggest support system? Like when you're struggling and when you're feeling burnt out, what do you do to feel better?
I don't really know if I have a support system.
Any activities you like to do that make you feel a lot better about life?
Definitely dancing. I enjoy dancing a lot, just because one, it's exercise and it gets those endorphins going in your brain, but also it's just fun to move your body to the music and just to kind of not have to think about anything else besides the music and just how you move your body. I think that I am able to kind of get lost in the dancing, which is really nice for me.
Definitely. That's good that you have a form and an outlet like that makes things a lot easier. All right, so we're going to dive into some of our questions here. What was it like for you growing up?
Growing up, I genuinely don't want to turn this into a sob story because I feel like everyone does that, but I do feel like growing up for me was hard, but probably in a different way than a lot of other people might have grown up, just because for me it was more about me as an individual and the cards that I was dealt rather than child upbringing or their financial situation.
So what kind of cards were you dealt that maybe wasn't really in your favor for?
So I am deaf. Growing up, that was hard to deal with because being deaf, it can limit your opportunities depending on how you deal with it and what you're able to find and do with that disability. For me, I got cochlear implants, which I think helped a lot. It helped immensely because it basically kind of served as a replacement for hearing. With my cochlear implant, I was able to hear other people, and as a result, I was able to learn how to speak and write and listen to other people, and I think that helped a lot with being able to kind of be part of a community and to be more accepted by people, which I think for people that don't have a hearing aid or anything, I think that does make it a lot harder to connect with hearing people who are deaf, choose to remain deaf, and they don't have any other sort of device that helps them hear people.
Do you remember what it was like when you were first able to hear after you got your cochlear implants?
I remember a little bit. I know that my mom always told me that when they presented the idea of me being able to get cochlear implants and having the surgery to be able to hear, I was very excited about it as a little child, and I wanted to do it. So that was why they decided to go through with it, because they wanted to make sure that I wanted it, rather than just doing it because they thought it was best for me. So I think I really, really wanted to be able to hear, and I wanted to have that opportunity. So when I finally was, I remember being at the hospital, and I was in this room where one wall was just a window. The entire wall was a window, and kind of feel like it was a cloudy day because I remember it being kind of gray. But then I put on my cochlear implant, and I don't remember how I felt, but my parents have told me that I was very joyful. Yeah, I was very amazed, and I was super thankful to be able to get them, and I wanted to get the other ear too, because we only did one ear at a time. So I was like, I want to get the other ear now. And my parents were like, okay, sure, we'll do that.
That's really nice that was able to happen and your dream came true.
Yeah.
You talked about kind of the earlier years and how that was a bit of a challenge with being deaf, but did you have any other struggles with growing up deaf, maybe in the later years?
Definitely. I think having a disability in general can be really tough on a person's mental health and their well-being, especially both because maybe they feel like they can't be accepted by society, but also if they can't accept themselves. So for me, I feel like it was a mixture of both, but it was experiences with not being accepted by other people because of my disability that led me to feel like I couldn't accept who I was. And I would say this got worse in middle school, because middle school was when I started having a lot of mental health issues, and I developed chronic depression, and I hated who I was, partly because of my disability. Well, I guess probably mostly because of my disability, just because I hated that everyone knew that I was deaf, and I felt like people were not as accepting of me because I was deaf. And then I would say high school was better than middle school, but I did still have kind of that same mindset sometimes, and I had those same struggles where I just really, really wished that I didn't have my disability, and I just couldn't accept myself because I thought that it wasn't okay to be myself.
Were you ever able to reach a point where you've been able to accept yourself, or that's still a work in progress?
I've definitely started reaching a point where I am a lot more accepting of myself. I think that started happening towards the end of high school, where I just started to kind of mature even more as a person and to be like, oh, it's okay to be deaf, because even though I'm deaf and I have a disability, I can prove to all the people, to all the haters, that I can still do everything they might not think that I can do. And then I would say in college right now, I'm definitely a lot more accepting of myself right now. And I think it's because, one, I don't really tell people that I'm deaf, and people can't tell that I'm deaf based on just meeting me. But when I start to trust people more, then sometimes I will actually let them know that I'm deaf. And then they're always like, oh, that's so cool. And that makes me feel really happy. And I think that was one of the things that I really wanted, was to be able to get to know people first so that they have that initial impression of who I am and they know what I'm capable of before they know that I'm deaf. Because people that just knew that I was deaf but never actually interacted with me, sometimes they would avoid me, maybe because they thought that like I was strange or I was just someone different from them, or maybe they were uncomfortable or they just didn't know how to talk to me. Maybe if I couldn't talk, then they would be like, oh, how do I talk to them? Do I have to use sign language? But I don't know that, so I'm gonna not talk to this person. I feel like that's what I usually thought was happening in middle school, and I think there's some truth to that, but I think that sometimes that was also not the case, but I can't always know.
Definitely. And I know you touched on this a little bit, but what are the biggest stigmas that deaf people have that aren't true?
Oh man, there's a lot. People think that like deaf people have to have assistance all the time, that they can't be independent, or that they can't do certain things. The one example is that a lot of people think deaf people can't drive, which is not true, because deaf people, they have hands, they have fingers, they have feet, and they have eyes. Even if there's a honk, sometimes, honestly, most of the time when people honk, it's not even necessary. Like it's just road rage.
That's so true.
And then ambulances and police cars, they always have flashing lights, so a deaf person is going to see that. And actually, there's been some evidence that deaf people might actually even be more perceptive drivers. Since they don't have hearing, their visual abilities are a lot more, I guess, precise. They're kind of more honed in, so that we're like more watchful for those lights and for those visual cues, more than people that are usually hearing.
That's awesome.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to move on to a new topic, and that is, what is the most difficult thing you have ever been through?
The most difficult thing that I've ever been through? I think for me, just being able to accept who I am, like as a person, and being able to accept my disability, because that was a very hard lesson for me to learn in middle school and high school. Just that I always felt like my disability was getting in the way of things, that I couldn't do things as well as other people, and therefore I had to try twice as hard and I would only get half as far. That's what I felt like sometimes, and I think that it was definitely difficult to try to overcome that mindset and to kind of realize my life is what I make of it, and other people, whatever they think, however they treat me, shouldn't affect my own self-worth, because it doesn't, and that I should be able to accept myself, that I can choose to make my life however I want to make it.
That is 100% the right way to think about it.
Mm-hmm.
On that depressing note, have you ever wanted to die?
Yes. In middle school, when I had chronic depression, I did think about committing suicide. And my parents didn't realize that I was depressed for a while. Actually, what happened, so I got in trouble at my middle school, and I had to talk to a counselor, and my parents were called to the middle school. I think that was kind of when I just fell apart, and they asked whether I was having suicidal thoughts, and I told the truth and I said yes. And then that was when my parents, I think they kind of realized like what was going on. They started having me go to therapy sessions. And then in high school, I did start having more suicidal thoughts again in my junior year, because junior year was just a very hard year academically, and I think that was also because of COVID and everything that happened with the world during that time. Yeah, I just dealt with a lot of different things during junior year that also kind of made me feel like, oh, like, why am I here? I'm just suffering right now. Like, I don't want to have to continue doing this.
Well, we're glad you're here right now, and we're glad that you made it through and that you can be here today.
Yeah, I'm glad too.
Would you say that after everything you've been through, right now, do you think you're a good person?
Do I think I'm a good person? Here's the thing. I don't like that question, because I don't think anyone is objectively only a good person or a bad person. I think everyone has a mixture of both. So
I agree, definitely.
so for me, I would say I still have my flaws, but I do try to be a good person. I try to be a good person. I try to do good things, and I try not to do bad things. And I think that's what counts. If you only do bad things and you don't care about fixing that behavior or doing anything, that can be when you're more of a bad person. But that also doesn't mean that they're only a bad person.
What kind of things do we need more of in society?
I would say being more open-minded, having the ability to have multiple perspectives, see multiple perspectives, and try to empathize with other people. Because a lot of times, we as humans, we make opinions on everything, and it can be very hard to change those opinions. But once you go through an experience where an opinion that you've had is suddenly just something completely destroys it, like it destroys your understanding of it, and you realize like your opinion isn't as true as you thought it was maybe, then I feel like that kind of makes you realize, oh, there's more to the story. It's not always just black and white. There's always things in between, and it's okay to not be sure of the answer.
All right, I like that. So we have it's okay to not be sure of the answer, and it's okay to question yourself and admit that you were wrong about something.
Yeah,
Be
that's
more
another
open-minded.
thing. That's another thing. Some people can't accept when they're wrong, or they can't admit when they're wrong. And I think that having the ability to admit that you're wrong is not a con. That doesn't make you a bad person. It doesn't make you any less of a person. It's actually better if you're able to.
Absolutely. Do you have any regrets?
I have a lot of regrets. I would say everyone in life has a lot of regrets. The thing about regrets is it's good to reflect on them, but not good to dwell on them. Because you can say, oh, like I did a terrible thing when I was younger, but I can learn to grow from it and not do it again. Or you can choose to view it as, oh, I did a terrible thing when I was younger, therefore I'm a bad person and I'll never change. I think that mindset is really unhealthy, and I think that if you're able to recognize that you made a mistake, you can choose to not do it again, and that you can learn from it and grow from it. I think that's what matters the most. I guess the biggest regret that I would have is not treating my younger self well. I think that's my biggest regret.
You said that it's good to reflect on them but not to dwell on them. Would you say that that is something that you are able to reflect on and not dwell on, or sometimes you dwell on it a little bit?
I'm better at reflecting on my regrets than I have been in the past, because I do remember, oh man, this is a confession. I remember middle school and high school, and this probably was also due to my mental health, but I remember every single night I would fall asleep thinking about all the mistakes that I've made. Even the tiniest little mistakes, I'd be like, oh my god, like that was so embarrassing, or that was like, why did I do that? That was horrible little self-criticisms. And I would say now I don't do that anymore. Yes, sometimes I'll embarrass myself and I'm like, oh, oops, shouldn't have done that, but I don't dwell on it. I think I've made an improvement.
Yeah, it's definitely good to not take life so seriously sometimes.
Yep.
Take a little breather. What would you say are the most important things in life?
Being willing to grow as a person and to improve on yourself as a person, because that's the thing, is we're always constantly growing and we're always changing, and if you're not able to adapt to new mindsets and learn new things and try new things and just become a different person, and you only stick to your old ways, it's detrimental for yourself and for others, just because the world's always changing and you're going to be changing too as a person, and that's okay. That's not necessarily a bad thing.
100%. So we have personal growth as a value. Anything else?
Happiness. Because I don't think you can ever find happiness. happiness isn't something that you can find or something that you can do something to achieve. I think happiness has to come from within, being able to be happy with your current situation and with who you are and the people that you're around and just where you are. I think that's also a really important thing in life because it's good to be happy with who you are.
Would you say that there's a difference between being happy with yourself and being at peace with yourself, or would you say that they're pretty similar?
A mixture. I would say a mixture because you can be both. I think you could be at peace with yourself but not be happy with yourself.
Explain that more.
Yeah, because maybe you accept who you are, but you can, in a way, you might still be like, oh, I wish I was something more, but this is who I am. I can't change that. I feel like they're two different things.
That makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
So, what are some of your biggest dreams looking forward towards the future?
Being like be with my life, happy with where I'm at, but I think I want to also be able to achieve my goals. I can't tell you what my goals are yet at this point because
no hints.
because I'm not exactly sure myself, but
very fair.
Yeah. But being able to continue to move through life, to learn new things, and I want to also be able to experience new things. One goal, dream that I do have is to travel and to see the world and see new places and try new foods and like experience different cultures. I think that would be a really, really cool experience to have. Definitely countries in Asia, just because I'm very interested in the culture there and I really, really like Asian cuisine. So I think Australia would also be really, really cool to visit. But I think just anywhere in general. I want to try going to different environments and cultures and seeing what everything is like.
Yeah, there's definitely a big world out there for you to explore. So you have plenty of time and plenty of options. All right, what would you say are the biggest things that make you unique? And I know we touched on this a little bit, but...
My perspectives that come with my disability. Just because being disabled, I think it does give you a different perspective, like a different unique perspective on life. And I think it helps you realize that there's a lot more to things than certain characteristics or attributes of people. There's a lot more to the story and there's a lot more to life than just those things. So I think just being deaf gave me a really unique perspective on life. I would also say maybe adding on top of that, having my cochlear implant, just because they're also a really, really cool piece of technology that gives me a really unique way of experiencing the world that other people don't experience. And I think that also gives a really cool perspective and cool new experiences that I have that other people don't have too.
So what are some of your passions? I know you kind of touched on dance and sounds like a little bit of advocacy.
Yeah, advocacy for disabilities I think is really important, especially with the issues of ableism and not having enough support for people with disabilities. I think all of those things are really, really important to have. Being more accepting and normalizing disabilities, because if I remember the statistic correctly, I think 1 in 4 people have some sort of disability, which is a fourth of the human population.
Yeah, I'm sure many people are very shocked to hear that right now.
Yeah, it's a lot more common than I think most people think it is. So it's kind of a disappointment that people often alienate like people with disabilities just because they think it's such a rare thing and that because they're disabled maybe they're not capable people and there has to be something done with them.
Absolutely, everybody is a person and sometimes that's hard for people to realize, but
Yeah. people, everyone's a human, everyone's a person, and everyone deserves to live as a person.
What are some of the biggest things that bring you happiness?
Lots of things. I would say dancing was one of them. Food. I love food.
Who doesn't?
I love food. I would also say my friends and family, just spending time with them and knowing I have that support, and just I love them. I love them all so much. So.
All right. Do you have any fears in life?
This one isn't as prominent now because I've been working on it a lot. But one fear that I did have is a fear of failure. Just not being able to handle failure, because I think it also had to do with my disability, that if I failed, it was due to my disability or due to my character, and that would make me feel even worse about myself. So therefore, like, I always had to succeed. Confirmation that, like, I can still do things, that I'm still capable, and that if I failed in any sort of way, then I can't do anything. I would say the fear of being abducted. Like, not abducted by aliens, just being, like, kidnapped or abducted by a person. And I don't know why that's such a big fear for me, but that's a really common nightmare that I've always had. Yeah, the fear that I'm gonna get abducted by someone and they're gonna kill me or my family or something. It got really dark, I'm so sorry.
No, it's okay. This is what this podcast is all about. Unleashing your inner thoughts and life secrets. All right, well, we are going to transfer to the final question. Are you happy?
I would say right now, yes. I am happy. Could I be happier? Maybe. But I don't think that you can always be the happiest all the time. I think that there's always varying levels of happiness for every single day, every single moment. And as long as you're happy most of the time, and you don't just hate your life every single day, I think, yes, I'm happy.
Why would you say that you are happy right now?
I think I'm really enjoying college right now. I think that I'm definitely enjoying it a lot more than high school, which is good. And the new people that I've met and the new friends that I've made that are just amazing people. I'm really happy that I am actually a part of their lives and that they're a part of mine.
That's awesome. All right, well, thank you, Mochi Mango. It was so great to have you on the podcast. Thanks so much for talking and telling everybody about all your life secrets and life thoughts. We appreciate it. Thank you for coming on.
Thank you for having me on the podcast.
Of course.
I appreciate it.
Thanks so much for tuning in to today's episode, everybody. I hope you enjoyed it just as much as I did. If you like this episode, don't forget to subscribe to this podcast and leave a review down in the review section of Apple Podcasts if that's where you're streaming from. Or leave a comment on YouTube if that is where you're streaming from. But thank you so much for tuning in today. Don't forget to keep your eye out for our next episode dropping real soon. This time it won't be 3 months from now. I promise that. So have a great day, everybody, and we look forward to next episode.